covered in this lesson are introduction, factors and multiples, prime and composite numbers, divisibility tests for numbers, common factors and multiples, prime factorization, finding HCF, that is highest common factor, finding LCM, that is least common multiple, playing with numbers. So we are going to play around with numbers. Now let us start with an example, with a real life example rather. Let's say that your dad got home 15 beautiful pens. So he bought 15 pretty pens of different colors and he got them to your house. And now it is your responsibility. Let's say that this is you. So it is your responsibility to share these 15 pens equally amongst your brother and sister. So basically you are two brothers and one sister. So there are three of you and it is your duty to share those 15 pens equally amongst the three of you. So basically you want to divide the 15 pens into three equal parts. So you have 15 pens. Now can you tell me how many pens each one of you would get? Now it's pretty simple. So total you have 15 pens and you want to divide it into three equal parts. So 15 divided by 3. So basically when you divide 15 by 3, what do you get? You get 5. So that means each one of you will get 5 pens. Now let's say that a friend arrived to your house. Now, since your friend has arrived and it looks really rude if you do not give her a pen. So now you have to divide those 15 pens into 4 equal parts. So in this case now, when you divide it into 4 equal parts, will you be able to divide the pens exactly into 4 equal parts? So basically now in this case, all that you will have to do is 15 divided by 4. Now when you divide 15 by 4, what do you get? You get a remainder. So 15 is not completely divisible by 4. So basically it is not possible to divide 15 pens into 4 equal parts. So some of you will have to take a lesser number of pens, right? So what do we learn from this? Here we saw that 15 as a number is divisible by 3, but 15 is not divisible by 4, right? Now, here I have taken small numbers like 15, 3, 4. Now, when we encounter bigger numbers, that time it becomes all the more difficult to determine whether a particular number is divisible by another number or not. So here in this case, as you saw, that some numbers will be divisible only by certain numbers and not by all numbers, right? So this is one scenario where we see that it is quite challenging to decide whether a particular number is divisible by a certain number or not. Let us look at another scenario. Let's say that you have participated in a rapid fire quiz. So you have participated in a quiz competition where there is a rapid fire round, let's say, where a question will be asked to you and you are supposed to answer instantly. Now let's say that you have been asked that is 49,762 divisible by 4? Now this is a big number, right? Now how do you think that you will decide whether this number is divisible by 4 or not? So what you will have to do is you actually need to divide this number 49,762 by 4. So what do you get? It is 4 ones are 4 and then you get 4 twos are 8 and then you have 4 fours are 16, then again you have 4 fours are 16. Now see, you have to do this much of division. You have to do the entire division to find out whether it is divisible by 4 or not. Now in a rapid fire round, do you think you will have that much of time? No, because time is a very important criteria in a rapid fire round. You might be asked to answer this within a few seconds. Moreover, you do not have a pen and a paper so that you can actually do these division. So you just have a few seconds to answer this. So it becomes very difficult because such big numbers, sometimes the number might be even bigger than this. It might be a 7-digit, 8-digit number. So what do? It's difficult. So here in this lesson, we will learn all these techniques which will help us to decide very quickly whether a number is divisible by another number or not. Now, in order to understand these divisibility rules, we will introduce certain new concepts like the concept of factors, the concept of multiples. So once you understand all these, then you will see that you can actually play around with numbers. You can actually see that with various numbers you can have some magical arrangement. So we will talk about all that gradually as we move ahead with the lesson. So here in this lesson, our target is to learn tricks to answer such complicated questions quickly. So we will play around with numbers. So on the screen you see there are some complicated questions which I do not say that you cannot solve them, you definitely can, but you would need time to do these kind of big divisions to decide whether such a big number, look at this number, such a huge number, and somebody asks you whether it is an even number or odd number. So it's difficult to, to tell these answers quickly, but that is our target in this lesson. That is factors and multiples. So what are factors? Factor of a number is an exact divisor of that number. Now you might ask, what is a divisor? Now let us say that we are dividing two numbers. So let us take an example here to understand what is a divisor. Let's say that I have written 4 divided by 2. That means 4 is the number which is being divided by 2. So in this case, 2 is the divisor and 4 is the dividend. So whichever number is being divided, that is dividend, and by which number it is divided, that is divisor. So how do you divide? You divide it something like this. 2 2s are 4. So what do you get? You get 0. So here 2 is the divisor, 4 is the dividend, 2 is the quotient, and 0 is the remainder. So these are the 4 terms that we use when we perform division operation. Now, a factor is an exact divisor of a number. Exact divisor would mean that when that number is divided by this number, the remainder will be 0. So that is the meaning of exact divisor. Exact divisor means that the number will be exactly divisible by that number, leaving no remainder behind. So let us look at a few examples. So let's start with the smaller numbers. Let's start with 1. Now, which number is an exact divisor of 1? That means if 1 is the dividend, which is that number which will be a divisor such that the remainder will be 0? So what would be that number? So that number would actually be 1, because 1 into 1 is 1. So therefore 1 is an exact divisor of 1. So we can say 1 is a factor of 1. Now let us consider the next number, that is 2. What about 2? Now for 2, 1 is an exact divisor, because if you divide 2 by 1, like 2 divided by 1 would be something like this. So 1 2s are 2. So the remainder is 0. So 1 is an exact divisor. 2 is also an exact divisor, because if you do 2 divided by 2, what do you get? This is how you do it. So 2 1s are 2. So here also this is an exact divisor. So basically 1 and 2 are factors of 2. And that is why this 2 can be written as 1 into 2. This can also be written as 2 into 1. Right? Because if 1 divides 2 exactly, that means 1 multiplied by something should be equal to 2. And that something is 2. Right? Let's look at the next number, that is 3. So in case of 3, 1 again is an exact divisor. Do you think that 2 would be an exact divisor? No, that's because if you divide 3 by 2, what happens? you see that you get 1 as a remainder. That means 2 is not an exact divisor of 3. So 1 and 3 are the exact divisor of 3. So this can be written as 1 into 3. This can be written as 3 into 1. Now whenever a particular number is an exact divisor or a factor, then that factor will be multiplied with some other number to get this number. Let's talk about 4. 4 is going to be a little different. In case of 4, 1 is a factor because 1 into 4 is 4. Do you think 2 is a factor? Yes, because 2 into 2 is 4. Do you think 3 is a factor? No, 3 is not a factor. What about 4? Is 4 a factor? Yes, because 4 into 1 is 4. So 1, 2 and 4, these are the factors of 4. Let's talk about 5. So in case of 5, 1 is a factor because it can be written as 1 into 5. Is 2 a factor? No. 3? No. 4? No. What about 5? Yes, 5 into 1 is equal to 5. So 5 is also a factor. Let's look at 6. In case of 6, 1 is a factor because 1 into 6 is equal to 6. 2 is also a factor because 2 into 3 is equal to 6. 3 is also a factor because 3 into 2 is equal to 6. What about 4? No, 4 is not a factor. 5 is also not a factor, but 6 is a factor because 6 into 1 is equal to 6. Therefore, 1, 2, 3 and 6 are the factors of 6. So basically, whenever we say factor of a number, that means we are basically talking about the exact divisor of that number. Now, another interesting thing that you will always observe is that the factor of a number will always be either less than the number or equal to the number. It can never be greater than the number. For example, here let's say the number is 6. So what are the factors that we have? 1, 2, 3 and 6. Do you think that you can have any number which is greater than 6 as factor of 6? Do you think that 12 can be a factor of 6? No, it cannot be, because if you divide 6 by 12, what happens? 12 divided by 6. So what do you get? You will get a result in decimals, right? So basically, when we talk about factors of numbers, we are talking about exact divisors. So we are not talking about decimals. We are talking about whole numbers. So they will not get divisible by whole numbers, and therefore bigger numbers cannot be factors. So a factor of a number is always less than or equal to that number. So this is another very, very important concept of factor. Thank you. Please visit examfear.in of some bigger numbers. Let us look at bigger numbers. For example, let's consider 12. Now, if I ask you to find the factors of 12. Now, 12 is comparatively a bigger number than 1, 2, 3 or 4. So, what about 12? Now, let's start from 1. Do you think that 1 is a factor of 12? Yes, of course, because if you divide 12 by 1, it will be exactly divisible. So 1 is a factor. 2, yes, 2 is also a factor. 3 is also a factor. Now why 1 is a factor? Because 1 into 12 is 12. Why 2 is a factor? Because 2 into 6 is 12. Why 3 is a factor? Because 3 into 4 is 12. 4, yes, 4 is a factor because 4 into 3 is 12. What about 5? Is 5 a factor? No, because 5 doesn't divide 12 exactly. What about 6? That's true, 6 into 2 is 12, so 6 is also a factor. What about 7? No, 7 is not a factor. 8, no. 9, no. 10, no. What about 11? No. What about 12? Yes, 12 again is a factor because 12 into 1 is 12. So this way we see. Now why didn't we go beyond 12? Because we know that a factor of a number is either equal to or less than that number. So factor of 12 can either be equal to 12 or less than 12. It cannot be greater than 12. So we went only up to 12. So what did we find? We find that 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 and 12 are the factors of the number 12. Let's look at number 13. Now, if you do the same thing for 13, you would see that 1 and 13. These are the only factors of 13. That's because the only possible ways of writing 13 is 1 into 13 or 13 is to 1. So these are the only two factors. Let's talk about another number like 15. What do you say about 15? Again, you write the same list of numbers and you would realize that 1, 3, 5 and 15. These are the factors. That's because 1 into 15 is 15, 3 into 5 is 15, 5 into 3 is 15 and 15 into 1 is 15. Let's talk about another number like 24. So for 24 again we have a lot of factors. Like 1 is a factor, 2 is also a factor because 2 into 12 is 24. 3 is also a factor because 3 into 8 is 24. 4 is also a factor because 4 into 6 is 24. 5, no, 5 is not a factor. 6, yes, 6 into 4 is 24. 7, no, 7 is not a factor. 8, yes, because 8 into 3 is 24. 9, no. What about 10? No. 11, no. 12, yes, 12 again is a factor because 12 into 2 is 24, and after 12 again none of the numbers are factor and directly 24 is the factor because 24 into 1 is 24. So from this list, are you observing certain things? One thing we observed is a factor has to be an exact divisor of that particular number. Second thing that we observed is factor of a number is always less than or equal to the number. Another thing that you would observe is 1 is a factor of all numbers. So you see, whichever number we have considered, everywhere we saw that 1 is a factor of that number. And another observation is that the number itself is also a factor of that number. You see, 12 is a factor of 12, 13 is a factor of 13, 15 is a factor of 15, 24 is a factor of 24, and so on. So that means that 1 and the number itself, these two are factors for every numbers.